one group who put up a very good fight against the new Muslim invaders. This was the Christian kingdom of Nubia, in present-day northern Sudan.
The Muslims tried to go to Nubia, but they failed because the strategic difficulties of the land and the long distance between their base and Nubia. The means of transportation in those days were very difficult. And the Nubians are some astonishing people, sons of a very great civilization. They are faithful, very loyal, and they can't change without being convinced. So there was some treaty between the Muslims and the Nubians for some time.
According to the treaty, the Nubians had to send 400 slaves every year to the Arabs, who in turn would send horses, cloth, and other goods. The Nubians, meanwhile, were left alone to practice as Christians for the next 6 centuries.
J. Spalding, an narco-hero, Medieval Christian Nubia and the Islamic world, a reconsideration of the Bach tree. He explains that the Bach is actually a native Nubian institution. They exchange gifts. It's how they do diplomacy. The terms of the Bach were debated even as early as the 9th century. And one thing Spalding notes is, quote, "Meanwhile, however, the actions of Nubian leaders and the generations that followed 652 strongly suggest that Mercuria, in the conduct of her foreign policy, was not guided by any Islamic lawyer's understanding of the Bach, but by her own." Here is an eyewitness source of what really happened. The Nubians fought the Muslims very fiercely. When they encountered them, they soured them with arrows until all of them were wounded, and they withdrew with many wounds and gouged eyes. Therefore, they were called the marksmen of the eye. A participant in the fighting on that front said, "I took part twice in the war against the Nubians during the reign of Umar b al-Khattab, and I never saw a people fiercer in war than they are. I saw repeatedly one of them saying to the Muslims, 'Where would you like me to put my arrow into you?' And sometimes one of our brave youngsters would say jokingly, 'In this place.' I would not miss the target. One day, they went out against us and met us in battle array. We wanted to decide the battle by launching a single concentrated charge with our swords, but we could not anticipate them. They sought at us until our eyes were gone. 150 gouged eyes were counted. We said, therefore, that nothing is better than making peace with these ones." One man, Al-Masudi, which was on the previous video, even said that the Arabs learn archery from the Nubians.
This is the account of the invasion and conquest of Alexandria, as written by the patriarchs of the Coptic Church, the leading religious force in Egypt at the time.
Now the Commander had destroyed the fort and burned the boats with fire and defeated the Romans and taken possession of part of the country. And the horsemen took the road through the mountains until they arrived at a fortress built of stone between Upper Egypt and the Delta called Babylon. So they pitched their tents there until they were prepared to fight the Romans and make war against them.
The Roman Byzantine troops were defeated. Alexandria was left untouched, and the Muslim invaders were hailed as liberators by the people of Egypt. The Muslim leader, according to church history, had no intention of disturbing the status quo.
Then the holy Benjamin prayed for and pronounced an eloquent discourse which made Amr and those present with him marvel, and which contained words of exhortation and much profit for those that heard him. And he revealed certain matters to Amr, and departed from his presence honored and revered.
The Egyptians were Coptic Christians, and had been so since the second half of the 2nd century AD. The Copts had been persecuted by the Byzantine Romans, and this determined the nature of their relationship with the Muslims. Dr. Abdul Wahad Afendi.
The Byzantines were very repressive. The Arab conquest was much lighter. They didn't burden people with too many taxes, and the people, even though they were suspicious at the beginning, as the system unfolded, began to find trust in it, and there were famous incidents where the Khalifa penalized his governor for even the slightest incursion against the freedoms of the people.
And religious tolerance was not the only reason the Muslims were welcomed. They were also seen as quite similar and familiar to the North Africans, who had grown used to Arab traders crossing the border.
The Egyptians, in some parts of Egypt, considered themselves relatives to the Arabs because of immigrations before Islam, because of some mutual relations. So the Arabs came, and the Egyptians, a religious leader, Benjamin, the patriarch of the Egyptian church, ordered his followers to help the Muslims against their enemies.
So some Egyptians acted as guides and even volunteered to fight as auxiliary troops in the Muslim army. But in the long term, the Muslim invaders put the Christians under pressure. One of the means was to exact tribute.
The Muslims, when they came, had to make some options to the Egyptians, either to adopt Islam or to pay a poll tax. And the poll tax was limited to those who are capable to fight. The churchmen were exempted, women and children, the elder ones, were exempted also, and the incapable people.
This prompted a number of Copts to convert, but the conversion of Egypt to Islam was a slow process.
Islam did not spread quickly in Egypt. Christians were constituting the majority of the Egyptian population. Until the 9th century AD, the conversion to Islam became more speedy, and the Egyptians became a Muslim people. But no one was forced under the threat of death to convert to Islam.